Hey guys, welcome to the Science Passage Mistake Analyzer spreadsheet. I want to give you a quick overview of its key features and how you can use it to help yourself improve your MCAT score. So this is the home page of the spreadsheet. It's called the overall sheet. And here you're going to see a breakdown of where your errors are coming from on practice exams for all of your exams together, right? So if we look here, it looks like this student, looks like 47% of their mistakes across all their exams are coming from passage-based mistakes. And if we look at a breakdown of these type of mistakes, we're looking at situations where the student didn't find the pertinent part of the passage. So they had a question and they were looking through the passage, but they didn't find that part of the passage that was being referenced by the question stem. And so that would be an example of this type of mistake. Another type of passage-based mistake would be not understanding a key relationship described in the passage. So this is where the comprehension strategies come into play in this course. We're going to show you how to truly understand the relationships that are mentioned in the passage. If you fail to understand some of these complex relationships, that would be this type of error here. Passage-based mistake number 3, if you didn't understand a graph, figure, or table from the passage, another thing we're going to be covering in this course, that would be this type of error here. And finally, the 4th type is relying on your own content knowledge instead of the important passage information. So you didn't recognize that this was a passage-based question. Instead, you accidentally thought it was a content-based question, so you relied on that, getting the question wrong. So that covers the passage-based mistakes. Looks like this student, they're making maybe 22% of their mistakes from content foundation mistakes. This would be mistakes related to, not memorizing the content well enough, right? And the first type would be forgetting the content. Second type would be just content you haven't been exposed to yet, you've never learned it yet. And finally, if you're relying on passage information instead of the content knowledge that you're supposed to use to answer the question, right? And this is, you can see with mistake types 4 and 7, this is where it's really important to recognize the type of question, right? If you mistakenly think that it is a passage-based question instead of a content-based question, you're going to make mistake number 7 here. Finally, we have key test-taking skills mistakes. These are just random mistakes. You might call them stupid mistakes. I think a lot of students will think of them that way. But it's better to, besides just thinking of them as stupid mistakes, start to realize what type of stupid mistakes am I making, right? Then you can correct those mistakes. And these types would include misreading a question stem, misreading an answer choice, running out of time, or making a math mistake. So I hope that gives you a good breakdown of the types of mistakes that you might make as you do practice exams and practice questions. And by keeping track of them, you're going to find out where am I making the most of my mistakes, and then you can target that area and work on improving that area, right? So obviously this is the overall homepage where we're kind of seeing your overall mistakes on everything. If you go to individual tabs, you can kind of see the breakdown for an individual exam. So if we went to their results for, let's say, the first full length, the AAMC scored 1, we'd see that the majority of their mistakes were coming from passage-based mistakes, and their biggest weakness is in not understanding the key relationships of the passage. This student would definitely benefit from working on their science passage reading strategies after this full length, right? So here's an example of how each exam can help you diagnose your weaknesses and the areas you need to improve and what you can do about it. Now, whether you're on the overall homepage or you're on one of these individual pages, you can just go ahead and click on the link that pops up for that cell, for that type of mistake, and it's going to take you to a graph where you can see that trend over time. So if we go ahead and click on this graph here, see it took us to the did not understand a key relationship described in the passage type of mistake, and we can see how the student is doing over time in that mistake, and it looks like they learned from their mistakes and they started to improve in this area. They probably put a lot of focus into preventing those types of mistakes, right? So as mentioned, you can see these timelines by clicking on any of the links either at the top of this homepage or one of the other pages, or if you want to, you can always just scroll up and down on this page. And one of the graphs that's on here that's not directly linked to is this graph right below the top graph, which is narrowing it down to a certain number of answer choices, which is nice to be able to see if you're getting better and better at eliminating answer choices, right? And so as you can see, this student over time slowly went from, narrowing it down to 3 answer choices to narrowing it down to the 1 answer that they chose, right? So this is a good thing to be conscious of and look for improving over time. With this general overview in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at what your spreadsheet currently looks like and talk about how to start inputting your results from your first diagnostic exam. Taking a look at a blank spreadsheet, you'll notice that all the graphs are empty. Everything says 0%, or it might say hashtag div/0 exclamation point. It might say some weird things here, but that's just because everything's empty right now. There's no data in here, right? There's no need to input any data on this first page. This page is going to pull data from the other sheets in this spreadsheet. So no worries about putting anything here. It's best if you don't mess with this page here. We'll just go over to the AAMC official guide page, the first tab of this spreadsheet. And if you did the AAMC official guide questions, you can just leave this name as it is. If you did a different test, you could go ahead and rename this. So maybe you did the next step half-length diagnostic. You can go ahead and put that name there, and I would copy it and paste that name right here into this cell. And doing so is going to cause all of the cells in here to change their name appropriately. So if you ever do a different test than the ones that are outlined in this spreadsheet, you can just change the name here, change it here, and it'll change it appropriately at the beginning. Also, as a side note, if you ever run out of tabs, if you're doing tons and tons of practice exams, you can always download another one of these and just change the names accordingly. You can do as many tests as you'd like and keep reusing as many of these spreadsheets as you'd like. So no need to worry about the names here. You can change them as needed. Just make sure to change it here and also here. With that in mind, let's go ahead and start filling this out as you will after you've taken your first AAMC diagnostic exam here. So for the section, you could just put chemistry/physics. You could abbreviate that as C/P. Question number, just put the first question you got wrong. So let's say the first question you got wrong was question 3. And then put the number of answer choices that you had remaining for this question. Let's say you eliminated one answer choice and you had to decide between 3 answers. You'd put a 3 in this box. The reason number is where you put the reason you made the mistake. And if you open up this note, it'll kind of give you an outline of all these. You can also look right over here in this chart as well. So either place you can look, you're just going to put the number down. Don't write any words in here, just put the number down. It's how the spreadsheet works. So for instance, let's say I got this question wrong because I just totally misunderstood one of the graphs in the passage. I just didn't read it correctly and I couldn't answer the question that was based on it. So I would go ahead and put a 3 right here. And notice that the whole spreadsheet's getting angry and getting crazy, and that's because we just don't have enough data in this table yet. It'll fix itself as we put more data in. Finally, you can put a little note for future review. I think this is helpful for, especially for content mistakes that you make. If you want to make a note to yourself to come back and redo that question after you've learned that content. It could also be helpful for, the practice you want to do in the future. Maybe before your next, practice exam, you're going to go through this one more time and kind of review the things you did wrong in the last test before you do another test. And in this case, I might just go ahead and put, practice reading graphs as my homework for myself before I do my next full length, right? So with every mistake you make, you want to make an action item, if you can, of how you're going to not make that mistake again, right? So this is a great place to keep track of that. And as you fill it out, it's going to start to look something like this. One extra note, if you have a question where you feel like you made the mistake partly because you didn't know the content yet, as well as partly because you didn't understand the passage or something to that degree where it's a mixture between 2 different errors, you can go ahead and write it twice. For instance, let's say that on this question 56, I felt like I made the mistake for a couple different reasons. You could go ahead and copy that, paste it again, and then you could just put in the different reasons. So maybe it was because you didn't read the graph, or maybe it's because you didn't read the passage correctly, and you also felt like there was new content that you hadn't learned yet. Or maybe you want to come back to this after learning operant conditioning, right? So whatever it is, just give yourself a note. Say, hey, let's come back to this after I've actually learned this better, and I'll retry the question again. Now that you've taken your diagnostic and you've filled out this sheet, you're ready to determine how many hours you should invest into this course, and that's going to be based on this number here of what percentage of your mistakes came from passage-based errors, because this course is focused on helping you with those types of errors.